There's no doubt about it. Money makes the world go round. There's a lot to know and a lot of information out there. But there's one podcast that covers all the topics involving finance. The Wealth and Freedom Podcast. Their mission is to educate and empower everyone to create a path for financial independence. The Wealth and Freedom Podcast covers all the financial topics you can imagine. They have interviews with leading experts on asset protection, passive income, real estate investing, precious metals, turnkey companies, cryptocurrencies, foreign residencies, and passports. And that's just the beginning. They cover much, much more than that. The Wealth and Freedom Podcast has it all. Find them on Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher, or at wealthandfreedomnexus.com.
You are listening to The Brian Craig Show podcast, broadcasting from sunny South Florida. Brian is joined by his wife and co-host, Kathy. Follow Brian on social media at BrianCraigShow.com. And now, Brian and Kathy.
Welcome to the program, everyone. I'm Brian Craig, always joined by my wife and co-host Kathy. So here we are. We started a new week, and here we are just over a year into the Biden reign, and everything's falling apart worldwide. And I want to start talking about what happened with Joe Rogan, because this is insane to me, okay? And I'm a fan of Joe Rogan. I think Joe Rogan does very good interviews. I watch his interviews quite a bit on YouTube. I don't listen to his podcast regularly, but I do subscribe to his YouTube channel. And when I see that he has an interview with someone that is interesting, I watch it, and they're always very, very good. And I was a big fan of Fear Factor. And, it's really amazing when you think about Joe Rogan. He had that small role on that sitcom, supporting. And then he got on Fear Factor as the host, which was a very good show. And Fear Factor was like when that reality show thing after Survivor, and Fear Factor just became a phenomena. And he was the host of that, and it was a big deal. And now here he is, the most talked about man in media, which is, and I'm sure it's insane to him. Like, he's probably totally freaked out by all this.
I'm sure he just wakes up sometimes and just says to his wife, "Can you just pinch me?" Because he's really...
Is he married? I don't know anything about him.
Yeah, he's married. But he's really, you're right, he's gone from, and he acknowledges that. He's just gone from just this guy, and he started this podcast with his friends, and it just blew up.
Yeah.
And now he's on Spotify making $100 million, and he is the man everybody's talking about. He's puts people on his show that are provocative and that get the left all freaked out. Just because, it's amazing how liberals get so upset over people just talking and just having conversation.
Yeah.
They're not changing policy. They're not passing laws. It's just two guys or a guy and a girl sitting there having a conversation about stuff that everybody's talking about, and they can't handle it.
Well, we're in a very dangerous time in American society today because, I want to play a little bit of Joe Rogan's statement today. He responded to the controversy that's been going on. Mm-hmm. But when the internet was new, when it was first launched back in the Clinton era, it wasn't called the internet, at least not by regular people. It was called the information superhighway. Remember this? And what they told us about the internet is it was going to be a place where there was freedom of expression. You could talk about anything you wanted to talk about. It was going to be a place where everyone would have a voice, and that was true for a few minutes. And now that it's become something, the primary source, I guess, of people's day, more so than television, now there's all these controls. And
when the internet first started, there was no social media.
There was no social media.
That's really changed the landscape as well, where you have people actually having conversations and dialogues. That you had chat rooms, but nothing like today.
Well, the problem is there's a few problems here that's going on. The internet is run by liberals. It's just controlled by liberally minded people. Not that everyone that's on that is involved in it is liberal. Most of them are, and liberals intimidate anyone who doesn't think like them that works in the tech industry. So those are voices that are silenced. And liberals in general, okay, and this is not new to the internet. Liberals have always believed they know what's best, and that anyone who disagrees with them is a hate monger, is to disagree with them and be vocal about it. This is, again, before the internet, they consider to be hate speech. They've always been this way.
Mm-hmm.
And now they have control. They have control over the internet, and the left just cannot handle it. They can't handle that people have opinions that they do not agree with. And so far as Joe Rogan had a guest on. Guest is an expert, a leader in his field, and the liberals have just had a meltdown that this doctor that is not Fauci approved was not only voiced his opinions, but it was that millions of people were exposed to these opinions that they don't like, that Fauci doesn't approve of. So they've been out to destroy Joe Rogan. And
well, that's what they do. I mean,
yeah,
they're extremely arrogant liberals. They have that in common, and they have many personality disorders going on. But one of them is arrogance, and they have a God complex, I believe. And they feel that the ends justifies the means for them, and they're having power, and they're stopping other people from talking. It's for the greater good in their mind. That's how they see it, that they're really helping people. They're helping society. So if you don't like it, you're just too stupid to understand the greatness that they're accomplishing. And it really feeds into that ego that they all have. It feeds into that narcissistic personality type where they're like, we know we're right. And, it doesn't matter in America. Like I said, two guys sitting there having a conversation is okay in this country. It should be. And I would hope people aren't going to make medical decisions based on a Joe Rogan podcast. Instead, they should talk to their doctor to decide anything. I would think people have enough intelligence to do that, but liberals think you're stupid. And they also can't handle, like you said, when somebody disagrees with them, or I think better yet, what's really upsetting them is the people he's having on are discrediting Fauci, who they worship. And I think that's really bothering them.
And Fauci, by the way, worships Fauci too, if you've seen that picture of his office.
Yes.
But yeah, so the liberals have always been this way. So let me play. I got a couple clips here. I have just one clip. Joe Rogan released a statement on his Instagram today, which is about just a video that's just under 10 minutes. And he talked about a lot of things involving this. And I just picked up one clip from it that I thought we would talk about. So this is Joe Rogan in his video statement that he released today.
One of the things that Spotify wants to do that I agree with is that at the beginning of these controversial podcasts, like specifically ones about COVID, is to put a disclaimer.
Okay. Things that are controversial, put the disclaimer. Anything that is interesting to listen to, like what we're doing now is a conversation. I've worked in talk radio since 92, 93. Any conversation that is interesting to listen to is a conversation that's controversial. So we're going to have to put a disclaimer on every conversation now because there's nothing that is not controversial to someone. Like, for example, something as simple as bottled water. There are many liberals who are very much opposed to bottled water because of the plastic that ends up in the waste. It goes on. No matter what the conversation is, it's controversial to someone. So now we've got to have constant disclaimers on it.
Well, Brian, they have disclaimers on old Disney movies now.
Yeah.
If you watch Peter Pan, there's a disclaimer at the beginning of the movie saying that the movie shows people smoking.
Oh my goodness!
Because God forbid,
depictions of tobacco use.
If you can watch any old movie pre-1980 and everybody's smoking in it, I mean it's ridiculous. But God forbid your kids see a Native American in Peter Pan smoking a pipe or something. It's gonna totally destroy their life. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Okay, let's get back to this. Is Joe Rogan's statement.
One of the things that Spotify wants to do that I agree with is that at the beginning of these controversial podcasts, like specifically ones about COVID, is to put a disclaimer and say that you should speak with your physician and that these people and the opinions that they express are contrary to the opinions of the consensus of experts.
Well, who's to say that anyone's opinion is contrary to the position and opinion of the consensus of experts? Global warming, climate change is controversial. Yeah. There's a lot of scientists who say it's true. There's a lot of scientists that say it's not. And there's a perception that more scientists agree that climate change is real than not because the ones with the liberal viewpoint get on TV all the time. So it appears that there's a consensus when there's not a consensus. So this whole thing is, if something is discussed and it's not the consensus of the minority or the majority, we need to have a disclaimers and saying, and by the way, minority rights here. Minority involves more than skin color. It can involve a group of people who believe in something. Okay, so this idea that anytime someone represents a minority opinion, there must be a disclaimer. Because let me go back. That's what he's saying.
Once about COVID is to put a disclaimer and say that you should speak with your physician, and that these people and the opinions that they express are contrary to the opinions of the consensus of experts.
How can you determine that? For example, Joe Rogan's opinions with his guest. People might think that the opposite opinion is the consensus because there are people that are afraid to speak out because they don't want to be harassed like Joe Rogan been like Joni Mitchell and Neil Young are after them and everything else. All right, let's go on.
And by the way, have they interviewed every doctor
exactly.
in the country? And look what's happening with women's sports. They're altering how women's sports are played based on a very small group of people. But because of this small group of people, which do not represent the consensus of women, women are losing in swimming now by massive amounts of time here.
That's right.
Which I think is very important. Sure, have that on there. I'm very happy with that. Also, I think if there's anything that I've done that I could do better is have more experts with differing opinions right after I have the controversial ones. I would most certainly be open to doing that.
Okay, now this is a mess. Let me tell you. When I first started in...
Seems like he's going down a rabbit hole.
Well, when I first started in talk radio, 92, 93, it's been a long time. I don't remember if it was 92 or 93 when I believe it was 92.
It's almost 30 years.
Yeah. Now I'm pretty sure it was 92.
That's 30 years this year.
Yeah, it was 92.
30th anniversary.
It was 92 because I remember... When I first started in talk radio, it was 92 because I remember Bush 41 was still president, and it was coming up on the campaign with Bill Clinton, Governor Clinton. So it was 92. That not long before I started in talk radio, a few years before that, Ronald Reagan ended this. There was something called equal time in broadcasting, and this applied to radio and television. And it was a nightmare. When I first started in talk radio, the guys that were in talk radio, because they'd been doing it for a long time in management, had worked their entire careers during the equal time period. And they would tell me horror stories. If I took a call, this is how equal time worked. If you took a call from someone who had an opinion, right? I like green beans and green beans. Everybody needs to eat green beans. You would have to have someone come on right after that telling you that green beans were not the way to go.
How could you even do that?
Well, it was not possible.
Yeah,
and
that sounds like a lot of manipulation.
Well, Rush Limbaugh used to talk about this, okay? Yeah. Equal time. The most obvious places you guys noticed equal time, if you remember back up until the 80s, if you watched your local news, sometimes the general manager would do an editorial at the end of the news. And every once in a while, there'd be some Joe Schmo come on, and he would give his opinion.
Yeah,
I'm Joe Sixpack, and I'm giving my rebuttal to the station.
They did that here all the time.
They were required to do that under equal time.
Yeah, I remember that on the local
news. That's why they used to do that. It seemed weird, but that's why they used to do that. So Rush Limbaugh used to talk about this a lot, and I've talked to Steve Kane about it a lot too, because it was a nightmare for him. So talk radio, which, still we have talk radio. I work in talk radio, and podcasts are an extension of talk radio. Talk radio, prior to Ronald Reagan ending equal time, was not on that many radio stations because it was so impossible to have an opposite opinion on the air on everything that you're required to by law. Most talk radio was like Dr. Laura advice, or they would talk about cooking, or they would talk about movies or lifestyle. There was not very much opinion in radio. And then when the equal time ended, it made it easier to do it. So that's when talk radio exploded, when you could, and there was a more diversity of opinions nationwide, and we've operated without that for many years. So what Joe Rogan's talking about, what they're requiring of him, is to have an opposite viewpoint on every time he has someone that's on controversial. And there's a lot of problems with that. One of the problems is liberals don't believe their opinions are controversial. So if you have a liberal on who, and I'll pick a very controversial position, who's pro-choice, right? Mm-hmm. A liberal wouldn't think that you need to have a pro-life person on because they're an anti-woman hate monger and their opinion is not controversial. Their opinion, their pro-choice opinion, is the consensus of the most. See,
their opinion's always the consensus.
That's
somehow.
Correct. Liberals believe that their opinions are the majority opinions, and
the exact
that's it.
opposite is really true. But they're very out of touch, and
well, they don't know that.
It's amazing to me, how they think and how they view the world, and they
in
just
a very bizarre way, Kathy.
They don't see it. They don't understand.
They never will.
It doesn't matter whether it's to me the consensus or not. It's his show, and like I said, it's just two guys having a conversation. They're not, it's a podcast. I think he should be able to talk with whoever he wants on his own damn show. I mean, he's not sitting there promoting pedophilia or something, illegal like that.
Yeah.
He's got the guy on who helped invent this vaccine to talk about it.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with that? And
you
the
would
whole
think
world
nothing.
just erupted over it.
Yeah.
And the more they talk about it, what's bothering them is really in the media. What I think is really bothering them is he's getting more attention and more views than all of them combined.
Well, listen, let's take a break and then we'll finish up with that because it's funny you bring that up, Kathy, because I have something from CNN. Brian Stelter.
Oh yes.
Brian Stelter had a panel on this. And they're just having a fit about Joe Rogan.
They can't handle it because he's getting much more attention than they ever could dream of.
More people listen to the promo for the Joe Rogan show than watch CNN.
It's true.
It's true. So listen, we're going to take a quick break. We'll get right back into that. I'm Brian, always joined by my wife and co-host Kathy. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Brian Craig, always joined by my wife and co-host Kathy. All right, so Brian Stelter had a panel today. This clip I'm going to play is from Brian Stelter's show. You're going to hear from a lady guest he had. What her name is and everything is unimportant. But this is, what Brian Stelter does is he's a coward, as most bullies are.
Yeah, he's a bully.
Yeah, so he brings on other people to say what he doesn't want to say on television. He gets other people to do his dirty work so he can sound like he's an impartial journalist.
Yeah, that's exactly what
on CNN. So here they are on the Stelter show talking about this Joe Rogan controversy.
Kat, you wrote on Twitter about Spotify. You went viral for a comment about it yesterday. Tell us your point of view first about this Spotify mess, because it's really dominated the week.
Yeah, what I think is interesting about the backlash against Spotify vis-a-vis Joe Rogan is that
vis-a-vis Joe Rogan. Wow, she's just got that vocabulary. Vis-a-vis. What a snobby way to talk.
The backlash against Spotify vis-a-vis Joe Rogan is that people are fundamentally angry about not being able to stop his audience from wanting news that is bad for them.
Okay, now this is totally insane.
Wow, that is the height of arrogance.
So we're in a brave new world here. So it's not only a problem that Joe Rogan has people on that CNN doesn't approve of. And like you said, Kathy, before the break, the big problem is Joe Rogan on his lowest rated podcast has more people listening than watch CNN probably in their prime time all week combined.
He has more people watching him, I think, than all the national shows combined.
Probably.
He's got 11 million.
But now they've taken the problem. There's another problem. It's not just Joe Rogan. It's not just Joe Rogan's guest. Is that there are people in America who want to hear that. And people that want to hear this are also the problem. I mean, go back. I'm going to go back. This is insane to me that
this is how liberals are.
That something like this is being said on American news television.
I think is interesting about the backlash against Spotify vis-a-vis Joe Rogan is that people are fundamentally angry about not being able to stop his audience from wanting news that is bad for them.
Who's the people?
There are people.
Who's the people that are angry?
Well, these are there are people that they believe on CNN are good people.
Right.
These good people don't want other people to want to listen to anything Joe Rogan says because what Joe Rogan is saying is bad for them to hear.
This is what the left does.
Anytime bad for them to hear.
Right. Anytime you say something or draw attention away from the liberals or give a different point of view, that's when they start calling you names, bullying you, and trying to silence you. This is what they do. It's like a knee-jerk reaction. They can't help it. They're jealous. First of all, they're very jealous
of his,
because he's not part of their club. He's not a journalist. He's not one of these Ivy League. He's just a regular guy, you know. And now he's the top guy. He's been catapulted. And the more publicity he gets, the bigger he's going to get.
Well,
they're helping him along. They don't seem to understand that.
And they're not done.
It's like with Donald Trump.
Now, when you listen into this, don't get bogged down on the discussions about COVID, because this could apply to any issue.
It's not about that.
And CNN, they just want Joe Rogan gone because they have lost control of the narrative.
That they want Joe Rogan gone. They want Tucker Carlson gone. All the top people, because
just Brian Stelter on every television all day.
Brian Stelter is a big part of this because he's really upset that nobody's watching his show. That's what this is really all about. And he's like a little brat in the corner crying and stomping his feet saying, how come nobody's paying attention to me?
That's right.
And this is how he's acting.
That's right.
People are fundamentally angry about not being able to stop his audience from wanting news that is bad for them, wanting something that's bad for them.
So CNN's also identifying a problem with hearing things that are bad for you. You know, I could turn on CNN and see a commercial for McDonald's telling me to take the family to McDonald's for dinner. Isn't that bad for the family, health-wise?
Exactly.
I mean, come on. And this is
what about just getting in your car and going on a family road trip? I mean,
this is textbook fascism, because remember, in Cuba, Soviet Union, Nazi Germany, and I'm not calling them Nazis, but there are certain characteristics of their propaganda. Yeah. In all of these fascist places throughout the world, throughout time, it's not just illegal to speak out against the government line. It's illegal to hear it and not report it. So like in the Soviet Union, it's 1960. We're in Moscow. We're communist all the way through and through, very loyal, support the party. We hear someone in a store say, down with communism. If we don't report them, we're guilty too. And that's what they're talking about here.
Well, you're seeing that too with the masks and stuff too. People confronting each other about that in public as well, and acting like little tattletales.
Exactly.
So, we're all haunted by the specter of this guy who's listening to Joe Rogan and internalizing this bad information and making bad choices as a result. But Rogan is like a weed that sprang up outside the mainstream media ecosystem, and he thrived there, and he has this huge audience.
Don't you hear that? Now, little truth here. He's a weed
there you go.
Outside of the mainstream media ecosystem.
But Rogan is like a weed that sprang up outside the mainstream media ecosystem, and he thrived there, and he has this huge audience.
Okay, now, before we finish up with this clip, CNN, I know they're lowly rated, but they're in mainstream media circles, they're a place of credibility. When CNN was new, the mainstream media did not take them as a serious news organization. 24-hour news, they did not. And it was not until the 1991 Gulf War that CNN became mainstream. Before that, they were like Joe Rogan. They were the outsiders. They were like One American News or Newsmax that didn't get any respect. And they did some very controversial things like collaborating with Saddam Hussein with Peter Arnett and everything back then. But they had less than zero credibility with the mainstream media. And now, this news organization that used to be the outsider in the 80s up until 91, now they're the establishment, and they want to do what the newspapers, it's an interesting thing if you follow media. When President Kennedy came in and started the televised press conference is when television news became important. Before that, it was all newspapers. Television was fringe, and newspaper reporters didn't give credibility to news people. The real reporters were in print, right? And then that happened. And then CNN came along, and then cable finally got credibility. It didn't for a long time. Now that they're losing their stranglehold, the cable news, and there's new things like podcast and talk radio and other things, now they're trying to shut that down.
And that's what's really scary, that Spotify could kick him off tomorrow and it wouldn't make a dent. It wouldn't make a dent in his audience. People would still listen to him. And crucially, they still wouldn't trust more mainstream media sources. And I think that's what's really, really frightening to people.
Okay. Yeah. So
frightening to her. When she says people, she's talking about her and her ilk.
Yeah.
Not the American public.
That's right.
She's talking about her and her friends.
Yeah.
And she's giving you a glimpse into how they really feel that this is scaring them because they're threatened by him, and not in a way that they're threatened by him because they're losing their audience. Mm-hmm. They're losing their audience in droves. See, what's happened is CNN...
Well, and it's not just losing their audience, Kathy.
And their credibility.
They're losing their power to influence people.
That's exactly right.
That's what their fear is.
That CNN and other mainstream media sources are arms of political parties. I mean, even with Fox, you see Paul Ryan is helping run the show there, and he's a politician. And you're right. They're losing their power and their influence, and because they're losing their ability to use propaganda with the American people, because that's what they do. I mean, the politicians use the media. How many anonymous sources that go to CNN are from politicians just spreading gossip and rumors for their own political purposes? That's what they do. They call somebody at CNN, and if they're friendly with them, this is what I heard. Oh, okay, we're going to go right to the 8 o'clock show with this one. No proof, nothing. They use it to spread. They're the ones spreading disinformation.
That's right.
I mean, how many people on the mainstream media interview the people Joe Rogan's interviewing? They don't want you to hear from those people. They don't want to, they tell you what you want to hear. They decide
they tell
what you get to hear.
They tell you what they want you to hear.
Right, what they want you to hear.
And they tell you what they want you to think about everything. And they have lost their influence, and that's because there's freedom of speech. Now, I want to...
Yeah, it's slowly... And when people get paranoid and lose something, they try to grip it tighter, and it makes them lose it even more.
Yeah, that's right. Now, I want to take a moment to thank our Patreon supporters for their support of the program. Thank you so much. And if you would like to support the program, a great way to do that is to become a Patreon supporter. There's a link to our Patreon page in the description of this and every episode. There's also a direct link on my website, briancraigshow.com, and there are perks and benefits to becoming a Patreon supporter, including getting commercial-free editions of each and every podcast episode. And our top Patreon supporters get a live on-air thank you shout-out on each and every podcast episode. The names you're about to hear are our top Patreon supporters. I want to thank Andrew and Connie, Christine, Gary, ETW, Chuck, D, Pamela, Jacqueline, Rich, Rick, and Nick. These are our top Patreon supporters. And again, there's a link to our Patreon page in the episode description. And the direct website address is patreon.com/Real Brian Craig Show. Patreon.com/Real Brian Craig Show. We'll be right back.
Brian Craig here. We heard from another loyal listener of the Steve Kane Show, Wisconsin Gary. He and his wife ordered the MyPillow foam mattress, and Wisconsin Gary called in to share their experience.
We ended up buying the MyPillow mattress, and believe it or not, Brian, for 2 days since we've had it, I have gotten the most wonderful night's sleep. First night that we got it, that when we were watching you on the show, that all of a sudden, didn't take long, I was already actually snoring in her ear. So that's how quick this mattress is really done for us. So we were really happy that we got this mattress. It's great. It just completely enlightens you in the morning and everything. And it's just an outright great product. We have the foam mattress that we have on here. We just love it.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much. And with the promo code Kane at checkout, Kane, on the MyPillow foam mattress, 30% off, and you get 2 free MyPillows with that, as well as a free set of 100% cotton Giza Dream Sheets, and free shipping with the promo code Kane, Kane. Well, that's a great story, Gary. I appreciate that, and thanks so much. Yeah, he's a good MAGA guy there, Wisconsin Gary, with his MyPillow mattress, 30% off with the promo code Kane. You get 2 free MyPillows, a free set of the 100% Giza Cotton Dream Sheets with the promo code Kane, and free shipping. That's amazing, right? You can also order by phone, 1-800-716-4879. 1-800-716-4879.
Do you feel like the inability to learn new concepts and a poor memory are holding you back from staying ahead of the competition? How would you like to be more focused and more attentive? You can do all that and more with the book Fast Learner Blueprint: How to Master Any Skill Faster. Available online at zynko.sellfy.store. That's zynko.sellfy.store. With this must-read book, you will learn to master new skills faster, retain information further, longer, and be able to apply it. We live in an insanely fast-paced world with new technologies released daily. Many sectors are advancing at such a high speed, it makes it easy to lag and miss out on new and exciting opportunities. This is why being a fast learner is highly advantageous. When you read Fast Learner Blueprint: How to Master Any Skill Faster, you will discover why it's so challenging to learn a new skill, why the 10,000-hour rule of mastering new skills is an illusion, the difference between soft skills and hard skills, and why you need to master both. 9 tips to help you become a fast and efficient learner, and so much more. What are you waiting for? Take that first step to living the life that you want to live and order your copy of Fast Learner Blueprint: How to Master Any Skill Faster, online at zynko.sellfy.store. zynko.sellfy.store. Your big day is about to happen. A wedding. It's special and it's the biggest event of your life. You want to capture that special day perfectly, and the right videographer can make all the difference. This is where Megapulse Media comes in. Megapulse Media is a professional wedding videography company located in Greenville, South Carolina. Owner Matt Jordan is a local who was born and raised in Greenville. He has years of professional experience working with weddings and events. He covers Greenville, South Carolina and the surrounding areas. When you visit megapulsemedia.com, you can see his portfolio, and you will quickly understand Matt is the man you want for the job. He will make your wedding video extra special, fun, and romantic. Visit his website, megapulsemedia.com, for a free consultation, or call Matt directly at 864-640-9355. 864-640-9355. There's a podcast you will want to add to your playlist. The Aussie American Podcast. The Aussie American Podcast is a show about nothing. Well, it's really a show about everything. The Aussie American Podcast discusses sports, everyday comical occurrences, cars, people, and everything else you can imagine. The Aussie American is geared at making people laugh, but also think a bit deeper than usual. The Aussie American Podcast is the perfect podcast to listen to on your drive home from work or when you're making dinner for the family. Find the Aussie American Podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and your favorite podcast platform. Add the Aussie American Podcast to your playlist right now.
You are listening to the Brian Craig Show podcast, broadcasting from sunny South Florida. Brian is joined by his wife and co-host, Kathy. Follow Brian on social media at briancraigshow.com. And now, Brian and Kathy.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Brian, always joined by my wife and co-host Kathy.
I wanted to read one thing, which is very pertinent to what we're talking about. Meghan McCain tweeted this earlier today. She said, I think a lot of people are missing the point. Ask yourself why so many Americans have fled mainstream media and gone to Joe Rogan. He gets 100 million listeners a month.
It's a lot.
That's crazy. And Jim Acosta can't even break 500,000 in prime time. Why doesn't anyone trust you anymore? See, this is what they don't understand. The reason people are leaving the mainstream media in such droves is because they're realizing that they're being lied to everywhere, every day, and they're being manipulated. And the people are sick and tired of being lied to and manipulated, by the mainstream media and being gaslit all the time. And they're freaking out. You're right, because they're losing their grip, their control. Yeah. And it's not just them. They're getting probably a lot of heat from other people above them that are like, you better rein this in and you better figure this out. So what do? They go and try to destroy who they think is standing in their way when it's really themselves that are creating this problem. I don't know why they just can't be honest with people, because they're a tool that politicians and other people in powerful positions use to manipulate the masses. We're just a bunch of sheep to these people. Go in this box and don't go in that box. That's all that's happening right now.
No, you're right. Now, over the weekend, this is insane what the left do. Okay, over the weekend there were a group of 10 people up in the Orlando, Florida area, which is near Walt Disney World, on the side of the street, claiming to be Nazis, yelling out Nazi slogans with Nazi flags and things like this, and saying anti-Semitic things on a megaphone. So what do the media do? They go to Governor Ron DeSantis and ask him to condemn it. And Ron DeSantis' spokesperson said that the governor will not condemn it. And here's the thing, Ron DeSantis, our governor, here we are, Kathy and I, of course, living and broadcasting from Ron DeSantis' free Florida. They want to go to Ron DeSantis to have him condemn the Nazis, to imply that they're connected to him and that he must condemn these supporters of his.
Yeah.
They don't go – there's a woman who is the Florida State Agricultural Commissioner who's running for governor of Florida as a Democrat. They don't go to her. Nikki Fried is her name. They don't go to Nikki Fried to condemn the Nazis. They go to DeSantis because he's the Republican. It's like when they try to do this with Trump with Charlottesville. And I watched several videos of these Nazis. This is – let me tell you. This is one of the fakest things I've ever seen. I'll tell you why that is. Everything they're wearing is brand new. Yeah. All right. Every Nazi outfit they're wearing is brand new, right out of the package. And the flags are brand new too. And, Nazis that are so bold with their Nazism that they're out on the streets of a city during the day on the weekend, their Nazi flags and their Nazi clothing are well worn. They wear them all the time. Yeah. And it's such a fake news thing.
But they're really trying hard to create this narrative that there's a neo-Nazi movement going on in this country, and that's alive and well. And you're right. They probably set up this whole thing just so they can go to him and say, condemn it. And, he's just like, I'm not going to play your reindeer games.
Exactly.
I mean, it's ridiculous. The news sets things up. We've seen this with CNN. They interviewed Don Lemon's cameraman and acted like he was just a regular guy on the street. It was his cameraman. It was a fake interview.
Yeah.
They showed them setting up a fake protest with signs and telling people where to stand. They stage things all the time. And then they'll stand in front of a burning city and tell you there's nothing to see here. It's incredible. This is why nobody likes them anymore, because they finally, the curtain has been peeled back and people are finally seeing what's going on. And Trump, I think, had a big part of that. He had a big part of getting people to question things and to look at things in a different way and to not just blindly believe everything you see and hear. And I think he helped facilitate that. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's a bad thing. But you know what? You should still be able to see and hear whatever is out there and not have it taken from you.
You should be able to.
And you decide for yourself. It's a free country. I mean, if they feel a woman can have a right to kill her kid, then why can't they listen to some guy talk on a podcast? I mean, it just makes no sense to me.
Well, okay, so what has happened in Canada over the weekend, I was talking about this on the radio this morning. And by the way, if you're new to me and this program and to Kathy, I do a couple things. I host a morning radio show Monday through Friday from 6 until 9 a.m. Eastern and take live calls on the radio. I'm on a bunch of radio stations here in Florida. It's the Steve Kane Show that I co-host. It's the longest running radio show in the state of Florida and has been on the radio since 1977. This year is the 45th year of broadcasting for the Steve Kane Show. And when I'm on the radio, I live stream on YouTube. When I'm on the radio, taking calls from our radio listeners and from people watching on YouTube and listening to us on other platforms. And then Kathy and I have this podcast, the Brian Craig Show podcast, which was named the number 3 must-listen-to conservative podcast in 2022. Number 1 was Mark Levin's podcast, which is a rebroadcast of his radio show. Number 2 was The Blaze, Glenn Beck. And number 3, this podcast, the Brian Craig Show podcast. So if you're new, that's why I do the podcast, do the radio, and a bunch of other stuff too. But on the radio this morning, I was talking about this just amazing protest in Canada with the truckers. And they shut down Ottawa, which is the Canadian capital. The boy Prime Minister Trudeau, all of a sudden he's got a positive COVID test and had to go into an undisclosed location to avoid them. And the media in this country are having meltdowns over this because what they're in a panic about, I got a clip here I'm going to play from Morning Joe on MSNBC, which I know none of you watch because Morning Joe was on television at the same time I'm on the radio.
And I have an article about that when you're done that just came out.
Yeah, so who's going to listen to anything other than me when I'm on the radio? But
True.
the left are having a panic over the truckers for a couple of reasons. A lot of it, the same problem they have with Joe Rogan, but a lot of it also is Democrats, liberals are not accustomed to being protested. And there are protests against conservatives, but they're all staged by paid protesters. And what I mean by that is they're professional activists. And what happens when there's a conservative who's protested, no matter where they are, the Democrats bus them there, pay their way, feed them, put them up in a hotel. It's like a weekend getaway. When there's a conservative protest against liberals, it's completely real and organic. And that's why liberals have a panic at conservatives protesting liberals, because they know it's real, and that scares them. So here's Joe Scarborough on MSNBC talking about the Canadian truckers.
Where were these protests when people were required to get 5 vaccines to start?
So now this is interesting. Their protest is not valid now because they weren't protesting in the past. I mean, where were the civil rights freedom riders, when, during slavery? I'm sorry, they were, you know what I mean? Because you're protesting too late. You didn't voice opposition long ago, so now your protests are not valid.
Where were these protests when people were required to give their children 5 vaccines?
They were in the doctor's office getting vaccines.
They were in the doctor's office getting vaccines, and they were making fun of left-wingers on the West Coast for being loopy anti-vaxxers.
Okay.
Now they have met the enemy, and the enemy, their enemy, is themselves, because they've become what they hated. They've become what they mocked, and now they're taking food from soup kitchens.
Okay, now the truckers in Ottawa were denied service from restaurants because they have vaccine passports, and part of the protest, they don't want to show vaccine passports, even the ones that are vaccinated, so they couldn't. So they went to a soup kitchen and asked if they could feed them. So now Joe Scarborough is, these truckers, they're taking food from the homeless.
Well, they're on the road. What are they supposed to do? They have
the restaurants won't serve them.
That's where they eat.
Yeah.
They're so put upon for being asked to do what they've been asked to do, required to do their entire lives. It's a cult.
Yes, it is.
It's a cult. So these truck drivers in Canada, they're in a cult because they are opposing the liberal mainstream viewpoints on something.
Well, this is interesting because now Trudeau is acting like the liberals here, and this is what he said. He said, because now they're painting these people in a certain light. We won't give in to those who fly racist flags. We won't cave to those who engage in vandalism or dishonor the memory of our veterans. There is no place in our country for threats, violence, or hatred. Then he continues to say, I've attended protests and rallies in the past when I agreed with their goals, when I supported the people expressing their concerns, like Black Lives Matter. Okay, so didn't Black Lives Matter, didn't they go around committing vandalism and destroying property? I don't understand what he's saying here.
That's Trudeau?
Yeah.
There's why would Black Lives Matter be active in Canada? They don't have the history of slavery that this country had 150 years ago. What's their beef with Canada?
He says, I've chosen not to go anywhere near protests that have expressed hateful rhetoric, violence towards fellow citizens, and a disrespect, not just of science, but of the frontline health workers. And quite frankly, the 90% of truckers who have been doing the right thing to keep Canadians safe and put food on the table. So he used Black Lives Matter as an example of the type of protesters
that's acceptable.
That's acceptable, even though they vandalize and destroy property. I guess that's okay with
it's
him.
not a protest if the people in power agree with the group. Your protest,
they're painting them now as a violent.
Well, what happened?
Racist groups.
What happened was, and there's video of this on social media. It was so typical. Just the leftist. I think the Democrats in this country are sending some of their agitators to Canada.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what they do.
I saw this on Twitter over the weekend. Saw this morning. In the middle of the trucker protest in Ottawa, a guy comes up, and this is in Canada, Ottawa, Canada. He's got a mask on, completely covering his face. And he's carrying a Confederate flag.
Oh, well, that's
and he's
totally
walking through the group, and the truckers are
in front of all the cameras.
Yeah, and exactly. And the truckers are like, "Get out of here! Yeah, you're not with us." And the guy, they ran the guy off, and they got video and a photograph of a guy with a Confederate flag, which doesn't even belong in Canada,
right?
In any way, shape, or form.
Well, that's what they do to discredit.
Yeah, so they're painting it a racist protest because
they can discredit them.
They sent a plant in with a Confederate flag, and I bet you that if the Confederate flag is an American thing. I don't know what the flag of Quebec looks like. I don't know what the flag of Nova Scotia looks like. Most Americans,
I only know the maple leaf.
We know the main flag. Most Americans don't know that the capital is Ottawa, and they don't even know who the Prime Minister of Canada is.
They probably think it's Toronto.
Yeah, I bet you the average Canadian, if they saw the Confederate flag, has no idea what it is. Possibly. Because that's an American thing. It's so bizarre.
Yeah, they don't. Well, my mom, when she grew up there, she said they never learned about American history.
No, well, it's Canada. So we don't learn about Canadian history.
So when she got her citizenship, she had to study it and everything for years.
Yeah, these people are out of their minds.
Well, this is what they do. They send in a plant, and this is a tactic of the left, and they'll send in somebody to go walk around with a Confederate flag. That's what they do here. So they can discredit them, and so Trudeau, and of course they always end up on camera and on TV out of thousands of people, and over a long stretch of a protest, they always end up somehow getting on television. And this is his out. This is his way of not dealing with. Well, I'm just not going to talk to people that walk around with the Confederate flag. It's so ridiculous, that they have to go to an American issue to try to make them look like racist. They have to use one of our old flags from our history. It's so stupid.
I guess they don't have any racist symbols in Canada that they could use. So they gotta go to the Confederate flag here. Typically, I've been going to conservative events for a long time, and here in Florida, mind you, in Florida is the Deep South. And I have never, and I mean this, okay? I have never seen someone carry a Confederate flag at a Republican event.
Back in the 80s, maybe.
Well, I was a kid in the 80s. I wasn't going to things.
But maybe not even at a political event, but around town you would see them.
No, you wouldn't, because a Confederate flag is a Democrat flag, by the way. I have never, the only time, and I've gone to countless conservative events over the years. The only time I've seen a Confederate flag at a Republican event is when I'm watching television and they have somebody walking through there, like at the at the Capitol Breach. There was a guy just coincidentally walks slowly with a Confederate flag.
Maybe it's the same guy. He just goes from one protest to the next.
Maybe, and when you see someone with a Confederate flag, chances are they're a Democrat plant. Usually,
there's a lot of those.
Usually, yeah.
There's a lot of those, and
That's
they use plants because they accuse Trump of using plants.
That's why they accuse him of doing it, because that's what they do.
They think all the black people that sit behind him at the rallies are all paid actors.
Exactly.
That's what they do.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Well, I was surprised you had a lot of Canadian callers today. Our friends from the Great White North, the Canucks, and I was glad to hear from them. I'm part Canadian, and they are very frustrated, but I was really surprised. Now, my family that lives in Canada, they don't like Trudeau at all. They don't like him at all. But I was really surprised to hear that they all said they have a lot of liberal friends. That one lady said her family won't talk to her anymore. That even because of Trump, he's not even their leader.
Yeah,
and they're all upset. But you asked them, and a lot of them said they have a lot of liberal friends. So they obviously like this infant that's running their country, who's a total weirdo, if you ask me.
Trudeau.
He's strange looking, and just a strange guy. He's been elected twice, so clearly there's a huge amount of people that are comfortable. But look, it's a socialist country; they're used to this. But everybody up there that doesn't like it, come move to Florida. We already have a bunch of Canadians here already.
I like how
you're welcome.
The Prime Minister of Canada says the only protests that are good protests are ones he approves of.
Exactly. When you're the only ones he'll meet with.
When you are the leader of a country, if there's a protest that you agree with, it's not a protest.
Exactly.
Right? Because they're agreeing with you.
Exactly.
Protest is when they're not happy with what the establishment is doing and they're trying to change things. He's just a spoiled rich brat. He's just stupid.
Well, he can put on his black face and go in disguise.
Exactly. Now, before we break, I just want to say this is a big deal to me. I'm not sure if it's a big deal to you guys. But over the weekend, one of the great radio disc jockeys of all time passed away. And it's very sad. And I'm not joking around about this. Dr. Johnny Fever.
Oh, my gosh.
From WKRP in Cincinnati.
One of the best shows ever.
Howard Hessman. And from WKRP, and let me tell you, when I was a kid and I was watching WKRP in Cincinnati, That's when I first started getting interested in radio.
Yeah.
It wasn't the main thing that got me into radio. That was it was a movie with Christian Slater called Pump Up the Volume, where he played like this talk radio guy, and I thought that was the coolest thing. I got to get into that. But WKRP in Cincinnati was the beginning of my interest in radio.
Great show.
And let me tell you something about WKRP in Cincinnati. WKRP in Cincinnati, I've watched every episode many, many times. It's great, especially the Thanksgiving turkey episode, which I'm sure is on YouTube or something. You got to watch it. It is, even though it's a sitcom, WKRP in Cincinnati is the most realistic depiction ever of radio. Every radio station is like WKRP in Cincinnati to a certain extent. It is the guy
Even today.
Yeah, the guy that created WKRP in Cincinnati worked in radio, and he modeled it after radio stations and people he had worked with.
Probably especially more back in the 70s.
Oh no, it's just exactly like that. And and it was I couldn't believe this. Really upset me today at the radio. I talked about the passing of Dr. Johnny Fever of WKRP in Cincinnati on the radio today, and someone came up to me in the hallway and said, another radio guy died, and they told me there's another radio guy that died here in South Florida over the last week. They thought,
Bird.
Yeah, they thought that Dr. Johnny Fever was they didn't know who he really was. They thought I was talking about a real radio disc jockey.
Maybe they did. I mean,
they did not.
He was so good in that
young.
part. He is Johnny Fever. I always think
Howard Hessman, 81, I think, 82, 81.
He died in surgery.
Oh my goodness.
He was
complications of surgery.
So good, so good in that role, and that's one of my favorite shows. It was one of those great shows like Seinfeld where the chemistry just fit. And it was really just good chemistry and really funny.
Oh, yeah.
But he was really great on that.
A couple years ago, we had a television station. I forgot what it was called. And they ran WKRP every episode in order from episode 1. And we watched them all.
I wonder if it's streaming on anything.
I'm sure it is. Yeah. And you guys should definitely check it out. Listen, we're going to take our last break. But the passing of Dr. Johnny Fever, that's terrible. Herb Tarlick, the sales manager, he died last year.
That's right.
Yeah, my goodness. They're all dropping from WKRP.
We're getting old.
Yeah. Listen, guys, we're going to take our last break. When we get back, there's a lot more to talk about, so do not go anywhere. My name's Brian, always joined by my wife and co-host Kathy. We'll be back right after this.
From author Tori U. Bates comes the book Rise, 5 Hours That Changed My Life, available on Amazon. When author Tori Bates was shot one Saturday evening in December 2021, it signified that life, as he and his family once knew, would be changed forever. It would take the strength of his wife and 10 children, his rock-solid faith, and a miracle from the Lord to see them through the coming hours as he fought to make sense of what had happened to him. In Rise, the author recounts the evening in graphic detail when an unprovoked attack, which would have killed him on any other day of the week, didn't. And he was able to return to the loving embrace of his family once more. Now, he reevaluates everything he thought he knew. He is more determined than ever to follow God's path, which saved him from another one of life's missteps, and to listen to his word at every opportunity. All proceeds from the book go to build a home for those with no address in solving childhood hunger and violence in Memphis, Tennessee. Order your copy right now. Rise, 5 Hours That Changed My Life, from author Tori U. Bates. Available in Kindle, paperback, and hardcover editions on Amazon. Do you want to be a director? Have you been trying to get into directing television or films? Maybe you're interested in how it all works. If so, there's a podcast you will want to add to your playlist. The Directors Podcast with your host, Jeff T. Thomas. The Directors Podcast is a 13-episode limited series featuring some of the most talented television and film directors in the industry. All episodes are available right now. Part 1 features the story of how each director broke into the business. Part 2 is a discussion, director to director, about their process, as well as highlighting some of the most defining moments of their careers. The Directors Podcast is fascinating and enlightening. Listen to industry secrets, get tips on how you can make it in the amazing business of television and film directing. The Directors Podcast with your host, Jeff T. Thomas, is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and your favorite podcast platform. Add the Directors Podcast to your playlist right now. NFTs are the newest art medium, and they're taking the world by storm. Did you know that NFT is one of the highest trends searched online? NFT Tel Aviv is all about art. They're an NFT artist agency that's a full-service talent agency, representing photographers, digital drawers, musicians, video art, and 3D artists. Some of the services NFT Tel Aviv offer are management and representation, development and minting, art research, and a lot more. They proudly represent more than 40 fine artists and have helped them get into the NFT world, and focusing on fine art as well as small and boutique collections with just 20 to 50 pieces in the collection. If you are interested in NFTs or NFT as an artist, this is the agency for you. Based in Tel Aviv, and they trade worldwide. NFT Tel Aviv, online at nft-tlv.co.il. nft-tlv.co.il.
You are listening to The Brian Craig Show podcast, broadcasting from sunny South Florida. Brian is joined by his wife and co-host, Kathy. Follow Brian on social media at briancraigshow.com. And now, Brian and Kathy.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Brian Craig, always joined by my wife and co-host Kathy. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and make sure that you follow and subscribe on whatever platform you are listening to us on. If you're listening to us on YouTube, make sure you like the video and, of course, tell all your friends about this program. All right, so Glenn Beck, I'm going to play a clip here from Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck's talking about what insiders are telling him is going to happen when the red wave takes back both houses of Congress under Republican control this year. Listen.
Goes away before the next election, because if the Republicans sweep, there is one thing I can guarantee: they will do investigations and hearings, and this guy will be impeached and removed. It will happen. The things that he has done, I talked to somebody who gave me no details yesterday, unfortunately.
Yeah, and they told him this would happen. Okay, let me tell you this. Don't believe that. Okay, Biden should be removed from office. Joe Biden is on top of the dementia and all of that. That's the least of his problems. He's the most corrupt criminal to ever be president of the United States. And I don't say that because I'm a partisan Republican MAGA Trump guy. I got that new book you got for me, the Peter Schweitzer book.
Red-Handed.
Red-Handed.
You got a lot of good books.
I got a stack of books to read.
Yeah, all good ones.
I got a stack
Rigged
to read.
and Red-Handed.
Yeah. And, this guy is so corrupt. I mean, he's just a lifelong criminal. There's no getting around it. But he's not going to be removed from office. He very well may be impeached. And the reason he's not going to be removed from office is because the Republican establishment are all corrupt as he is. And Joe Biden has been in Washington so long, he knows, or at least Jill knows, because he may not be able to remember, but he's got all the dirt on all of these people like Mitch McConnell and all of them, and that's
my dad seems
going to happen.
Think that my dad's theory is, and we talk about politics. Whenever we talk, he's always asking me what's going on with you and politics and stuff like that, because he's very interested in that stuff, and him and his wife. And he thinks that they're going to impeach Joe and Kamala, remove them, and that Kevin McCarthy will be president. He thinks that's what's going to happen.
I would love that to happen.
Really?
Okay.
Well, he's got to be better than Joe or Kamala.
I mean, I'm not a big fan of Kevin McCarthy. I think he's
very ambitious.
I don't trust Kevin McCarthy. I think he's a Judas. I think he's a never Trumper.
He's very ambitious like Pelosi. And once he gets into that position of speaker, which he has coveted for a very, very, very long time, that could happen. I mean, Jim Jordan, all these guys, this is the new Washington now. It's just one investigation after another. This one will be warranted, though, for sure. If anything, it's good to bring things to light. But, Peter Schweitzer has this new book. It's explosive. You don't hear anybody in the media talking about it. So you guys need to get this book for sure. Brian will be talking about it, once he starts reading it and stuff. There's a lot of good stuff in there. I know you've read a few chapters, but I'm expecting a movie to come out like Clinton Cash. The same guy that did Clinton Cash, which was excellent, exposed all their foundation with Haiti and everything and all the money they took from the Haitians.
Yeah.
These people are very corrupt, and I really would like to think that they get their comeuppance at some point in this lifetime, that we can see them. I'm not saying they're going to go to jail. That's not going to happen. But at least to be exposed for the thieves and the crooks that they are. I I would like to see that happen. So people should definitely get that book because you're not going to hear about it in the mainstream.
Well,
Newsmax talks about it. They even interviewed the guy a couple times.
I do believe he'll be impeached. There's a difference between being impeached and removed from office.
We'll see what happens.
And I think that the Republicans are obligated to impeach this guy for what for everything he's done.
They'll bring him up right away.
And I'll tell you why Kamala Harris should be impeached. Joe Biden is suffering from severe dementia. We don't know what it is he has. Mm-hmm. He may have Alzheimer's. He may have Parkinson's. I don't know what he's got, but he's got some type of dementia. And Kamala Harris knows it. And to me, it seems that she's committing to impeach as high crimes and misdemeanors. She's committing a crime allowing someone who's mentally incompetent, and she's well aware that he's mentally incompetent, continue to have the nuclear football and run the country. I think that in itself is a crime that Kamala is.
Well, then they'd have to impeach a whole bunch of people because a lot of people know this and they do not, including his wife, even though she's not a politician. But a lot of politicians are complicit in knowing that. Has there ever been a time when a president and vice president has been impeached at the same time? No. That would be.
No. In fact, I don't think
they sure as hell aren't going to do it to make her president.
This may have happened, but I don't know of a vice president that has been impeached. That doesn't mean there have been vice presidents who have resigned. There, Spiro Agnew.
And she might. She
due to corruption.
She could do that.
Well, Spiro Agnew was caught in a bribery scandal. He was Nixon's first vice president. That's how Ford became vice president.
Right.
But I don't know of a vice president being impeached while they were vice president.
Right.
So I don't because Andrew Johnson was impeached, but he was president when he was impeached. He was Lincoln's vice president. So I don't know. I do know this that's a Kevin McCarthy becoming president in that way.
Stranger things have happened. That's what my dad thinks is going to happen.
If that were to happen, he would be the sitting president and he would run for election. He wouldn't hand the reins over to Trump so easily.
For sure.
Because once they get that power,
he would definitely run again.
He would run for the office. He would run for the presidency, Kevin McCarthy. I don't trust that snake. No, I don't trust him any more than I trust Paul Ryan.
Those are big what ifs.
Yeah, that's
I don't know if Glenn Beck's just trying to look like he's in the know.
Yeah, probably.
Because I've heard many people on TV say that Joe Biden was going to be impeached. That's nothing. We talked about that here last week.
Impeached is different than being removed from office.
No, I know, but I think he's trying to act like somebody told me something, and it's I can't say who and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Who knows? I wouldn't take to the bank what he says right now.
Yeah.
He just wants to. Of course, he is in with those rhinos probably still. I think.
No, I don't trust. And Trump's rally Saturday night. It's now official. Trump's rally on Saturday night in Conroe, Texas, was the largest political rally and political event in the history of the United States.
That's amazing.
Ever in our history. 90,000 people were inside the venue. Tens of thousands were not allowed in because they had reached capacity. So there were tens of thousands outside that didn't get in with the 90,000 that were allowed into the capacity. People that drove to the event with President Trump said people lined the streets for 30 miles out of the venue. There very well could have been 500,000 people that turned out for President Trump in Texas on Saturday night.
If that's the case, then he would have beat out Woodstock, which had 400,000 people. So if he had 500,000 total.
And I don't know if I believe that Woodstock
Not to mention
number.
all the people that watched it on TV and live streaming. Woodstock wasn't streamed live.
I don't know if I believe that number from Woodstock, but Woodstock had multiple people who were the top musical acts of the day.
Trump should go to Woodstock.
This isn't a concert. This is one guy.
Right,
he comes out and talks for 90 minutes, 2
they had
hours.
Jimi Hendrix, okay.
And there's just never been anything like this.
Nothing.
The left will never understand it.
Never.
The mainstream media will never understand it.
They can't handle it.
The rhinos will never accept it. Those Republicans against Trump, the rats. That's insane that many people. 90,000 in the venue, tens of thousands of outside.
I saw that crowd
outside.
Because Right Side Broadcasting had a camera in the back, which they haven't done really that I've seen before, and you saw the whole crowd, and I said to you, there's got to be at least 50, 60,000 just in here right now. It's huge.
It's unheard of.
I've never seen a crowd this big.
It was absolutely amazing. And I was talking about this over the weekend. I did a live stream on YouTube talking about this. I've seen pretty much every Trump speech. There's been one or two that I've missed in the last 7 years. I'm sorry. But I've seen, I would think, 98, 99% of Trump speeches easily, hands down. And this speech that he gave in Conroe, Texas was very different. It was the most serious speech he ever gave. It was still entertaining. He's always entertaining and interesting, but it was serious because things are so bad in the world and in this country under Joe Biden. He's really concerned. And
I loved it, but I could do without another reading of the snake. I could do without.
I love when Trump reads the snake.
I love
That's the
Trump.
best part.
I don't agree.
I love when Trump reads the snake.
He does too.
But there were two things that came out in that speech of Donald Trump's, which
it was
are major news. There's a lot of news came out of it, but two things in particular. One, and these are not in any particular order, just two though I'm going to mention. One was Hillary Clinton's law firm that is run by Charles Schumer's brother.
This was interesting.
Are the ones prosecuting him in New York, not the district attorneys.
Crazy.
That their top three attorneys, and I think is one of them Schumer's brother?
Yes.
Okay, Schumer's brother and the top two attorneys from the firm have taken a leave of absence for the firm, are working for no pay.
Pro bono.
Pro bono, completely free for the DA's office to investigate Trump.
He said, can you believe this? He said, Hillary's lawyers are investigating me.
And Schumer's brother.
Can you believe this is happening? Meanwhile, they're not going to find anything.
They still found nothing.
Let them waste their time. Somebody said on Twitter or Facebook that he is the most vetted politician in the history of this country, and that is true.
No doubt.
They have looked at that guy inside and out, 3 ways from Sunday, all over his financials, this and that. Nothing.
Because there is nothing to find.
Nothing bad. Mm-hmm. That should tell people that don't like Trump what's really going on here. I mean, do you think after 7 years he's been in politics now? We were talking about that the other day because we went to that amphitheater at the park that you saw him at.
Oh, my first Trump rally.
Yeah, and that was back in 2016.
15.
And
it might have been the beginning of 16.
Yeah, and I said, God, he's been like, he announced 8 years ago that he was running?
I think 7.
8 years ago. So they've been looking into him, investigating him for at least 7 years.
That's right.
Intimately. They have found nothing. So if you don't like Trump, you need to really ask yourself, don't you think if there was really something there, it would have come out by now?
And they would have found something. And the other thing, the other thing that Trump brought up that is major news is he was talking about Ukraine, and he said that the president of Ukraine said there's no problem, everything's under control. And what Trump was talking about is how Biden is causing a conflict, causing a war. The Ukrainian president and Putin have everything handled.
Right.
And Biden is instigating a conflict over there.
Right.
And Trump talked about that.
He wants a distraction.
None of these things made the news after the rally. They're talking about when President Trump said he would consider pardoning the January 6th prisoners from the D.C. Gitmo in the speech. We'll talk about that later in the week because we're running out of time. But and that's a good idea, which we'll talk about next time. But the media, breaking news, I mean, the anti-war leftist media have a president that is wagging the dog, instigating a war where there's no conflict in Ukraine.
They're helping him. That's why they're helping him.
And they don't even report it.
They want a distraction from his disastrous presidency.
That's right.
And this gives the media something else to talk about. And they're complicit. They're in on it. They probably hired a director and a producer like Dustin Hoffman and Robert De Niro to make this all happen, and hired actors and actresses to run through. You got to see that movie. They totally faked a war.
It's not that good, the movie. Wag the dog.
No, but it shows you what really happens with a lot of these networks, and they faked a whole war to get the attention off of this some scandal that was going on. I haven't seen the movie in a long time. I think it's a good movie, but it's the wag the dog.
That's exactly right. Well, listen, we are out of time, but we will be back next time. I'm Brian Craig, always joined by my wife and co-host Kathy. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we will talk to you next time.
From author Peter Allen Turner comes the book Zach Watkins, Blood Trail West, available on Amazon. The year is 1763. The French and Indian War is over, but even before the ink is dry, tensions reach a boiling point. English settlers, hungry for land, ignored the treaty's terms and poured over the Appalachian Mountains. They believed they had earned the right to hunt, trap, and explore the land to the west. Hoping to escape the political turmoil sweeping through the colonies, Zach Watkins and his Mohican friend Henry, two young men fresh from the war and thirsty for adventure, ventured into the Ohio Valley. What started as a peaceful journey quickly becomes a bloody trail. And soon, Zach and Henry find themselves once again fighting for their lives. Will Zach and Henry survive the latest war and avoid torture? Or will they die and be buried in an unmarked grave? Find out when you read Zach Watkins' Blood Trail West from author Peter Allen Turner, available on Amazon.